Our story begins in the incredibly beautiful Viscount Jacques Annex. This beauty is located in the Kingdom of Florent, and it is there that our main character first appears. Her name is Lisa, and her frustration is understandable because she will spend today again without food. If you look at the situation from the other side, she has long been accustomed to hunger. Almost no one knows about this extension, so few people come here. In fact, the estate is a real prison for her. Although the environment seems so charming, illegitimate children are always a disgrace to the family, which is why no one cares about them. After the death of her mother, she became mute, and her father visits her no more than once a year and calls her a mistake. Lisa had been accustomed to suffering since childhood. Her father tirelessly repeated that he always wanted to get rid of her. They decided to keep her in the family only so that she could become a replacement for her sister. In any case, it doesn't matter, because from today, her life will change dramatically. Usually one person came into the room with food, but today, things didn't go according to plan from the very beginning. 3 girls came to dress up Lisa and make her look like a real princess. No one explained anything. She was only ordered to come to the main hall, as if something had happened in the mansion. She tried to believe in the best. Life had long taught her to prepare for the worst. Her father decided to see her for a reason. Judging by his look, there is something serious here. For her father's face said much more than he himself, and she immediately realized that today was that very day. Soon the king's army will arrive in this territory, and the father hopes that Lisa remembers what she must do. Of course she remembers. It was because of this that she was allowed to live here, in a cage, for more than 20 years. Her duty is simple. She must replace her sister, not fall into the clutches of the soldiers, and kill herself. Her father gave her a dagger and asked her to pierce her heart, because this is the only way she can show her usefulness to her family. You cannot dishonor your history, so you need to follow traditions to the end and not allow yourself to be conquered. At that moment, her sister Kira entered the room. These girls are like 2 peas in a pod. Their fate has always been closely intertwined. Today, this thin thread must be broken. The father understands that this is the only way they can avoid pursuit. Otherwise, they will not be able to save Cyrus. He ordered her to immediately run to the carriage, because now every second is precious. Lisa must fulfill her destiny, for the sake of which she was always given the opportunity to remain alive. She always understood that she was nothing more than a replacement for her sister, but awareness does not help to quench the inner pain. She, too, always wanted to be loved, to see a good attitude towards herself, and to feel that someone cared about her fate. She just wanted to get a little attention, but now it doesn't matter anymore. When father and Kira left the estate, only Lisa remained from the family, who slept in her father's room. Early in the morning, the soldiers entered the estate and found this beautiful girl. They immediately thought that they could have great fun, because the commander-in-chief wouldn't even pay attention to it. He should not enter this room, and therefore there is nothing prohibited here. At that moment, Lisa immediately remembered her father's words, that she should not fall into the clutches of the soldiers. Before it's too late, you can still pierce your heart and escape shame for your family. A little more, and her life will come to an end. Finally, this suffering will end, and everything will be fine. The last time it was good when my mother was nearby, who did not get tired of repeating that she loved her little Lisa. Mom has been dead for a long time, and her daughter is used to the fact that she has absolutely no one left. At some point, a flock of birds flew into the room and prevented the soldiers from attacking the girl. A few moments later, a bloody scene occurred that was decisive for Liz's life. This means that the commander-in-chief entered the room and saw that his order had been violated. Apparently, the soldiers did not think at all about the consequences, and now they must pay for it with their lives. Without a single shadow of a doubt, he killed 2 soldiers who had come here to dishonor the daughter of Viscount Jacques. Lisa looked at her hero and thought that at least he stood up for her. She doesn't want to be left alone again, and therefore is ready to beg to be taken with her. In order to better understand what is happening, you must definitely go back in time, at least 10 years ago. An armed confederation of 10 countries went against the Kingdom of Ploid. The protracted war, which ended with the deaths of countless soldiers, ended in victory for the kingdom. All opponents were severely punished by Commander-in-Chief Max Warren. He was not just a warrior, but a real hero, nicknamed the Lion. We are transported again to the annex of Viscount Jacques, in the Kingdom of Florent. Max is shocked that these non-entities decided to run away and leave their estate. Even dogs defend their territories to the last, so this act is a real abomination. The dishonest and pathetic nobles turned out to be no better than a wild beast. Walking through the place, Max and his assistant smelled blood and entered one of the rooms. Unknown people committed suicide there. They were not military at all, which means these bodies were fake. Max ordered the Viscount to be immediately added to the list of fugitives, and a search began. In the territory of the flesh, such flowers are practically not found, so now they attract a lot of attention. The deeper you go into this garden, the stronger the smell. But this is illogical. After the main mansion, everything should be different, which means that there is an annex where someone lives. The resident of this extension did everything so that flowers surrounded his modest home. Max saw a flock of different birds and wondered why they all united. He went inside and saw something strange and incomprehensible at first glance. Then he realized what was happening and brutally killed 2 of his soldiers, who violated the rules of the knights. He ordered his assistant to immediately throw their bodies outside the gate and not even think about the funeral. It was at this moment that Lisa grabbed his cloak and began to beg him to take her with him. Previously, Max would have easily broken his arm for such behavior. But now something stopped him. He himself didn't understand what was happening, as if some kind of insight had descended from heaven and changed him for a few seconds. Assistant Carl was sure that another corpse would now appear, this time of a different girl. He asked his master to give him the opportunity to solve this problem, but Max refused. At first, he thought that in front of him was a mentally retarded child, because the girl should have guessed that he was an enemy. He thought that they had been looking for the Viscount's daughter all this time, but had never found her. Apparently, this is her, because she is very similar to the girl drawn in the picture in the house. Is it necessary to understand the degree of her intellectual development? Because she can only be a figurehead. Lisa constantly repeated that she was asking to take her with her. Max didn't even know how to respond to this. At night of the same day, an interesting picture could be seen in the chambers of the Florentine king. It turned out that Max took Lisa with him and has not yet decided what to do with her. Now she can't get away from him at all, which is how they ended up in this bedroom. When the aristocrats lost a war, they handed over all their subordinates to receive reparations from the kingdom. Everything changed after the kingdom fell apart, and no one cared who you were in the past. Due to the behavior of the nobles, the fate of children like her is already predetermined in a negative way. Carl believes that the girl does not deserve extra attention and will not bring any benefit. He offered to take care of her himself, but Max did not understand what he was hinting at. Carl knows his master's busy schedule, and you understand that he has no time for such problems. We completely forgot to fully introduce this guy, because Carl Jaden, the commander of the Knights, deserves special attention. He became famous for destroying enemies with his head, a very bloodthirsty and cruel knight, but at the same time an obedient servant. He is also known as the Leopard Beast, and this guy doesn't seem to be sympathetic at all. He asks you to hand over that girl to him, but you won't find a drop of pity in his eyes. Carl is trying to control his facial expressions, but apparently he is planning something terrible. If Max senses a lie now, he will certainly punish him to the fullest extent of the law. Carl said that he wanted to take her in because she smelled great, you dirty pervert. All Max feels is just the unpleasant smell of dirt mixed with blood. He is not going to let such bloodthirsty killers as Carl near this child, because it is inhumane. Giving something to your subordinate is considered the norm, but abuse is strictly prohibited. And even if Carl is Max's confidant, such behavior still cannot be tolerated. The leopard lion realized that it was better to shut up and not contradict the master. After that, he called another assistant and ordered to immediately take the girl to the dungeon. It seemed that he had already made a decision long ago, but at the last moment, he canceled his order. He still couldn't understand why this girl was clinging to the one who slaughtered her entire family. It's both funny and pathetic to watch, but it's pretty entertaining either way. It's just a whim, without any intention of taking responsibility and doing something good. Max decided to carry her to bed, but did it somehow especially sensitively and tenderly, as if they were husband and wife. He lay down with her and did not sleep for several minutes, and thought about the whole situation that had happened, as if he were trying to decide something for himself. Over the past 9 years, he has been working tirelessly to finally put an end to this terrible war. I must admit honestly that even such a smart and handsome knight as Max Warren, during all this time, never fell asleep with women. The first time Lisa saw blood at the age of 17, she remembered that day because it was unbearably hot. She tried to take off her sweat-soaked clothes, but saw red stains that stood out clearly on the snow-white fabric. At first, the girl could not understand what it was, and only when she felt wetness on her thighs did she realize that it was her own blood. Lisa had no idea what had happened to her and didn't even know who to ask for help, as she always did. The bleeding did not stop at all. It seemed that this was a disease from which people later died. It was on that very day that she first encountered not only the fear of death, but also her own sister named Kira. It was a strange feeling because it felt as if she was looking at her reflection in the mirror. Soon it was decided to change clothes, take off the bloody dress, and wash it until the blood dried. Kira ordered her sister to calm down and pull herself together. You can't cry all the time. They are not little anymore. All girls face this, so it's nothing to worry about, and you just need to get used to it. On this day, for the first and last time, she could talk to her own sister, but she remembered her sharp and special look. In the morning, she didn't want to wake up at all, as if it was raining and cold outside. Only a few seconds later, she remembered everything that happened yesterday and saw that she was not lying alone, but with a pumped-up man. Apparently, he also managed to wake up. But unlike Liz, he wasn't scared at all and didn't show any emotions. We immediately recognized her savior, although for her entire family, this man had always been the worst enemy. On the other hand, if he had not intervened then, most likely she would have died at the hands of the soldiers, or even worse. Litsa tried to quickly get out of bed, but he grabbed her hands and ordered her to answer his questions. The general always thinks about the battle, and now he is interested in where exactly did he run to the Viscount. The girl replied that she didn't know where he was now, but even if she knew, she wouldn't say. Even despite her difficult childhood, she does not want to harm her father. She does not want to, and cannot. Max called her useless and left behind. It became clear what he was doing next. He would abandon her, because she was of no use. Perhaps she will be locked in some basement and will wait a long time for the next opportunity to become useful. Lisa noticed that she had not heard an outside voice for a very long time, and this was a rather pleasant feeling. For many years, no one spoke to her. The girl got used to being silent and conducting only an internal dialogue. Max ordered his assistant to send her to prison, but at the same time, he saved her life, and it seems that he should be thanked. Lisa behaved incredibly strangely. She began to laugh loudly and thank her savior. Of course, Max was shocked by this behavior, and clearly did not expect such a turn of events. Meanwhile, at their estate, I received a decree from the emperor, apparently something important. Karl personally conveyed the decree to his master so that the servants could not replace the letter. It turned out that this was a reward for 10 years of dedicated service to the country, the title of duke, 2,000 slaves, and a lot of gold. Max was not happy at all. He already had a lot of gold and countless slaves. He was already accustomed to leading other people, as if they were pieces on a chessboard. It had become something ordinary and even gray. It is disgusting to see that the emperor considers this reward sufficient to pay him for 10 years of service. He constantly risked his life, refused to compromise, and shed his own blood on the battlefield. If the last prince had not given him the elixir, he would have died at the beginning of this path. 10 years ago, something still remains unclear. Max Warren is an imperialist to the core. After being rescued by the crown prince, he became as loyal as a dog and was willing to go even to the ends of the earth at the orders of his emperor. Many may resent such a reward, and this may shake the imperial faction. Max decided to talk about this upon arrival, but for now, not to bother himself with unnecessary thoughts. As soon as all the issues with Florent are resolved, he will meet with the emperor and settle everything. Now he was left completely alone in his office and, oddly enough, did not think at all about the war and everything connected with it. Now his thoughts are directed towards the very girl whom he saved, and who, this morning, thanked him with a smile on her face. He really saved her life, but words of gratitude seem too stupid. She practically cannot speak, and one gets the feeling that she has problems with her intellect. There is no point in killing such people, because she cannot cause any harm, and does not even have valuable information. It turned out that Karl wanted to talk to this girl again. Apparently, he was too interested in her. It seems that his tastes have completely changed, although he says that he is completely sincere in his intentions to take care of her. Apparently, concern is not the only motive. This guy is clearly hiding something and not telling his master. Perhaps he wants to eat her, because everyone knows the bloodthirstiness of this warrior on the battlefield. Max said that in a few days, Carl will no longer see Lisa, and many rumors may appear. A grown man cannot take such a young girl for himself, so he should forget about this idea. Carl explained that this was the first time he had smelled such a smell, and suggested that this child could be a carrier of elven blood. Few people know about this, but beastmen can detect the unique scent of elves. This information puzzled the commander-in-chief. He didn't think about it at all, but Carl is ready to believe, because this guy knows a lot about smells. Elves are known for hearing the voices of nature and being able to communicate with animals, and they are also extraordinarily beautiful. The elves are forced to hide because they are being hunted, and their paradise life quickly ends. When this girl was in danger, the knights were attacked by birds, and it seems that elven blood actually flows in her body. Even half-bloods are considered incredibly valuable, so there is nothing wrong with keeping this girl. Even if it turns out to be not a direct stream of elves, it can still be useful in the future. Meanwhile, Lisa spent her time in prison, but it cannot be said that this test was very difficult for her. She had long been accustomed to being alone and not feeling love, so now nothing has changed at all in her life. Max reminds her of her father, but foolishly hopes that he will come back for her and give her a second chance. Lisa never chose whether to be born or not. This is a fate that can only be accepted. Her very existence became a sin, and only her mother could brighten up this miserable life at least a little. She turned into a shackle that kept her mother from dying, and also became a hindrance for her father. They had no choice but to abandon her, and completely forget about her existence until the moment of crisis. Now it is unclear what will happen to her next. Perhaps death will finally take her soul and give her eternal peace. At that moment, she heard a familiar voice that ordered her to raise her head up. When Lisa obeyed the order, she saw in front of her a tall and stately man, the same one thanks to whom her life continues. Max carefully examined all the features of her face, as if trying to better understand who she really was. He ordered her to follow him, assumed a stern look, and showed that he had no tender feelings for her. During the last meeting, he said that it was useless, but apparently changed his position. They climbed up from the dungeon, and meanwhile, Liz's head was occupied with various thoughts. Even her father never visited her in her own home, so compared to him, this guy is several times better. He seems strange, but even stranger is that next to him, her heart begins to beat several times faster. He talked to her and came back again. This cannot be a complete coincidence. There must be a clear reason behind this. In any case, he saved her, and even if she is destined to die, she wants to do something special for him. Lisa again approached her savior and grabbed his sleeve. As if needing this touch, she smiled again, looked into his calm eyes, and again reminded him that she was incredibly grateful for everything he had done. During her time alone, Lisa completely forgot how to talk, so it's difficult to understand her. Only thanks to his ability to count by lips did Max understand what she had just said, and he was quite surprised. Her father couldn't read lips, so their conversation was always more like a monologue. Now everything can change, because finally there is a person with whom you can calmly talk. Max decided to ask something. He was interested in whether Lisa knows how to communicate with animals or whether she knows how to control them. The girl replied that she did not have such skills, but it seemed as if she did not even check it. Max explained that he returned to her in order to find out her strengths and weaknesses. We'll have to find another use for it, but it can still be useful. Lisa remembered that she studied writing, and although she only remembers the basics, it can be useful. In any case, she is used to total loneliness, so she cannot give him too much. This is a difficult child with a lot of psychological problems. It would be stupid to demand immediate results. Max asked her to think again about her skills and understand what she could do for him. Lisa seemed to feel hope, felt that they believed in her. This had never happened before. She must try her best and completely obey her new master. If Lisa turns out to be useless, then Max will send her to Carl, and then all the fun will end. Thus, it was decided to hire her as a maid. Lisa accepted this news with great enthusiasm. She was released from prison and was now treated with more respect, and was even sent to the bathhouse. Now she will even be given permission to enter Max Warren's room, although not everyone likes this. According to rumors, the Marquise is a eunuch and is attracted only to men. Little is known about this, but apparently his tastes have changed. The girl who is now bathing Lisa is called Carol, and she wants to talk a little about working in this estate. Since they usually don't pay much for work, they say that you just need to like Max. But this is not entirely true. The maid should be able to cheer up her master and do everything possible for this. When Carol told this to the new maid, she was sure that Lisa would only become a temporary pleasure for the night. Nevertheless, Lisa was incredibly inspired. Her childish naivety was impossible to hide. She is confident that she will be able to meet a lot of interesting people, and this makes her heart beat faster with excitement. She wants to experience the feeling with which her father treated his eldest daughter. Carol immediately began asking a huge number of questions of her older friend, hoping to learn something new. For Carol, all this is just an abomination that she doesn't even want to talk about. She thinks this girl is too mediocre, thin, and doesn't have any unique tastes. Carol has no doubt that this girl will soon be kicked out, because Max does not like this attitude of the maid's. That's why she started giving Lisa bad advice and asking her to sit on Max's lap and start flirting with him. To begin with, you also need to remember every small detail about your owner, what he likes, and what, on the contrary, brings him big problems, because this is the key to their relationship. Absolute devotion and no personal feelings or attachments is what makes a maid sought after and beautiful. For a little girl who was not used to adult life, it was difficult to take it all in one moment. It will be quite difficult to forget about personal feelings, especially with a guy like Max. All this time, he was in his room and reading military documents. It was at this moment that Lisa came into his room in a new guise after taking a bath. He immediately began to feel embarrassed because he was making her a servant, and the other servants had misunderstood everything. They thought that he had borrowed her for something more intimate, and they dressed her up too beautifully. It seems that they are of no use at all. Or maybe Max is mistaken, and they did everything the way he wanted. Apparently, Lisa took Carol's words to heart and decided to immediately act according to the plan. She approached her master, slowly sat down on his lap, and looked him straight in the eyes. He couldn't understand what was happening. For a moment, it even seemed to him that she was pretending. Max decided to break the distance and directly find out what she was going to do. Only a little later, he began to realize that all this was just truly childish naivety. This is nothing more than an attempt to get warm words and goodwill. She wants to be praised, and without even understanding exactly how she is trying to get the desired result. For Max, all this looks quite ridiculous. It's hard to even believe that he got involved in something like that. It feels like this girl has the blood of a dog that wants to be petted, not an elf. At first, he wanted to call the servants and ask her to pick up Liza, because it was already late and time to go to bed. He will have to follow her for some time to find out the abilities of this girl, in whom the blood of an elf flows. A little later, he thought it would be better to spend time together and give her the opportunity to sleep on his floor. Perhaps someone else would have been upset by such a proposal. But Lisa, on the contrary, was happy. She accepted this offer as something special and lay down right on the floor, next to his bed. It seems that she blindly trusts her new master, because even this attitude is much better than the attitude of her father. During the very first meetings, she clung to Max without a second thought, and that already says a lot. The next day began with breakfast. It turned out that Lisa really looked more like a dog. It's hard to believe that a noble elf can't eat without cutlery. It even sounds crazy. She had to be taught to wipe her face with napkins and try to keep food off her clothes. Since childhood, no one has been involved in her upbringing, and therefore she grew up like Mowgli's child. The only plus is that she understands everything and learns very quickly to correct her mistakes. She is not completely unsocialized. She does not know the norms of behavior, so you need to be patient. When Max asked her to change clothes, she didn't even think that he might not be ready to see her out of her outerwear. When the food fell to the floor, without any doubt, Lisa tried to eat from the floor, like a true dog. You need to immediately get used to the idea that parenting takes a lot of time and will cause even more trouble. Only now the Marquise began to think that Lisa might be an illegitimate child. This would explain everything. Outwardly, she very much resembles the girl from the portrait, but apparently there is some kind of family conflict here. She was raised as a disposable double in inhumane conditions, and it's terrible. It looks like she really is an elf. No one even thought about raising and educating her. Apparently, Lisa didn't even think about fleeing these inhuman conditions. There was some kind of restraining factor. Probably she was always waiting for her mother to come, but she never did. She looks like a stupid and naive child, so you have to teach her manners and do everything to benefit her. After breakfast, Max introduced her to his chamberlain named Actrium, who would teach her the most important elements of life. Max ordered to be very attentive with the girl and not to offend her in any way. When he left, Actrium immediately looked at the girl who was smiling at his left eyes. Apparently, he was also not very happy with his new task, because he considered Liza only a night servant. Some people have to work hard to get into the service of the Marquis, while others only need to be born an aristocrat. All this makes Actrium very painful. He does not understand why the Marquis allowed this woman to bed in front of him. She understands and does not know how to do anything, and therefore deserves any punishment. He is not going to let the slave of the defeated nations look at him with arrogance. Now Lisa is punished for her rude behavior, even though she only smiled at the sight of her teacher. Although the Marquis is strict only in relation to the knights, Actrium wants to show Lisa her true place in this house. If the owner finds out that she was punished, then Actrium will do everything possible to ensure that she no longer lives here. This is how true goodness and naivety can meet with anger and envy in the real world. A little later, they finally began the learning process. They have a lot of work to do. Lisa did not remember well a large amount of material, and therefore did not enjoy the process at all. And she got a real sadist who enjoyed her failures and constantly called her a non-entity. There are many factors mixed here, a sense of social injustice, as well as human envy. He believes that Lisa does not understand anything until she is hit, and therefore the process of re-education must be harsh. It seems that she is not worthy even to guard the beds for the master, and will not be able to hold on to this position for long. She must also remember that she must not tell the master about Actrium's punishment, otherwise it will be even worse. Lisa felt not only pain, but also fear, which completely took possession of her innocent soul. All these years, she only lived in a lack of love, but no one tried to intimidate her. No matter how hard she tries, she still remains useless, and she can only hope for a miracle. At that moment, Carl entered the room. He heard that something strange was happening and decided to see for himself. Entering the room, he saw Lisa sitting on the floor, who immediately tried to wipe away her tears. He began to ask her questions regarding training, but Lisa did not pay any attention to this. She saw a man with a tail for the first time, and of course decided to play around a little. It seems that this miss is too fearless and does not understand that she is next to a real killer. It's dangerous to grab men for something like this, because it can end very badly. This is the first time Lisa sees a beastman in front of her, so you shouldn't treat her too harshly, but rather explain what it all means. Simply put, beastmen are creatures with the traits of humans and animals, crossed into something single. They are faster and stronger than any human, and are therefore highly prized among powerful aristocrats. The man who is telling all this is called Carl Jaden. He is a leopard, and at the same time a servant of the Marquis Max Warren. He immediately explained that it is not nice to pull such creatures by the tail. It is considered rude behavior. Only now did Lisa realize that she had done something stupid, and was again upset about her failures. She thought that now he would beat her very hard for her misdeed, because that's exactly what Actrium did. After a few seconds, she was surprised to realize that they were not going to beat her, but were just taking her hands. He wants to look after her and help her become part of this house and part of modern society. Grabbing someone else's tail has another meaning. Sometimes such behavior means love at first sight. This means that Lisa wants to live with this person all her life, and even the rulers of countries cannot break such relationships. That is why they should be together. Carl tried to express himself in these words, until she mercilessly stepped on his tail. He immediately experienced all this incredible pain, and prepared to tear his offender to pieces. This is exactly what would have happened if it had not turned out that this offender was the Marquise. He listened to the conversation and recalled that Carl had already warned not to try to take possession of this girl. Carl also completely forgot that he was forbidden to even approach this girl. Apparently, his desire turned out to be stronger than his fear of the Marquise. This sometimes happens. Carl is an experienced assistant. He quickly got his bearings and remembered that he had a lot of urgent matters. Even despite its great height, this leopard landed on the ground with ease, although Lisa was very excited. Now she truly understands what a beastman is, and she is increasingly interested in getting to know him better. In just a moment, Carl found himself very far from the estate. It's hard not to draw parallels with the leopard. Apparently, Max is completely dissatisfied with the behavior of his assistant. He does not want to share Lisa with anyone. From her reaction, it immediately becomes clear that she liked this man with a tail. She had never seen anything like this before, although she had seen nothing at all in her prison. The Marquise decided to surprise the girl even more, and said that he, too, can develop such speed and agility. Lisa was really surprised, and began to guess that the Marquise was also some kind of wizard. She looks at things around her very naively, and behaves like a child. In fact, Max is a true sword master, having the ability to destroy an entire army in a minute. This is a much more effective method than a magician's spell, but it's better not to talk about it. Mother asked Lisa to be careful with this leopard, and not to rush to trust people she doesn't know. He also said that Carl is a very dangerous pervert who loves young girls. Of course, she doesn't understand what all this means. It's enough just to say that Carl is very bad. He was warned about the ban on approaching Lisa, but he dared to come while Max was away. It seems her scent is really driving her crazy, and all this time it wasn't deceiving at all. This is very strange, because the Marquise only smells a slight smell of soap. It seems that only beastmen can smell the special smells of elves. This is their innate quality. A little later, Max returned to his room and called the servants with him. Without realizing it, he began step by step to become more and more jealous of her for the world around her. All this time, he deceived himself and pretended that she was an ordinary slave who should provide benefits. But now it becomes clear that his true motives are completely different from what he is trying to show. With each new day, it becomes more and more difficult for him to hide his true feelings, and soon it may get out of control. The Marquis allocated a person to train her, but Lisa is still too weak in understanding the subtleties and knowledge. When she is next to him, on the contrary, she learns very quickly, and there is something strange about it. Most likely, the problem lies in the actrium, and as soon as Max realized this, his eyes immediately lit up with fire. He realized that the assistant was neglecting this girl, and perhaps even using force in the training process. Lately, the days have changed very quickly, although during the wartime dragged on endlessly. Carl has already learned that the master considers him a dirty pervert. He tried to explain that he had nothing like that on his mind at all, but his desire to see the girl was somehow strange. Carl kept repeating that he only wanted to help the child, but now it's too difficult to believe such statements. He was warned not to joke with innocent children, although the Marquise was no better than him either. Everyone around thought that Lisa was being used as a night servant, but only now Zenock learned that everything was just the opposite. Such rumors give rise to even more sophisticated fantasies, which are better not even talked about. The Marquise hasn't had a woman for 10 years. Now he has suddenly changed his approach and shares a bed with one of the maids. Perhaps he needs to ask a few questions, but then Carl will arouse even more suspicion. He chose the technique of ignoring, and said that he did not want to interfere in Max's affairs. The only thing he is interested in is helping a small child who reminds him of his younger sister. Zenock immediately noticed that 2 grown guys had gone crazy at the same time because of a new girl. He realized that this was too strange and decided to immediately go to meet the Marquise. He knows that Max is now at a meeting, and his room is empty. Apparently this is Zenock's plan. Thus, we learned that Zenock is also very sinful. Perhaps he will now fall in love with Liz. When they entered the room, they saw that the girl was going through the learning process, but not at all as needed. Instead of reading books, learning poetry, learning the rules of etiquette, she kneels in front of the actrium. In his hands he held a rag with which he mercilessly beat her in the face. Lisa did not even raise her eyes. Of course, Zenock and Carl immediately began shouting at the teacher, but he was not at all taken aback. Actrium said that they were having a lesson. The student did not want to listen to him, and therefore he had to be tough. Carl almost went crazy after this phrase. The lust for murder could immediately be seen in his eyes. No beating can help in teaching a child. Beating can only be a way of punishing a bad teacher. When Carl beat Actrium, He looked straight into Lisa's eyes and showed her that he was doing everything precisely for her sake. This teacher even forgot to say hello. Apparently, he doesn't know the rules of etiquette that he teaches others. The moment of retribution had finally arrived. It had to happen sooner or later. Lisa looked at her offender with a very unclear look, not condemning him at all, but not laughing at him either. Even in such a neutral position, he saw something bad and hated his student even more. He believes that it is because of her that he suffers all these humiliations and must apologize on his knees. Carl reminded the teacher that if he used such methods again, he would lose his head. After that, he was kicked out of the room and decided to talk to the little servant. She was hit in the face with a rag, so it didn't hurt too much, and she feels pretty good. In any case, she is very pleased that someone decided to take care of her. This has never happened before. And they even offered to try the delicious fruit. And this surprised Lisa very much. Previously, she was allowed to bring tea and snacks to other people, but she was never allowed to try all these sweets herself. Remembering her entire difficult childhood, the girl could not stand it and burst into tears. But it was difficult to watch. But she quickly calmed down and accepted Xenok's gift. The fruit turned out to be sour and sweet at the same time. Lisa was satisfied and asked for more. Although Xenok had a small portion, apparently he also succumbed to her magic and gave everything he had. All this time, it seemed to him that the Marquise was being led by a cunning fox, but it turned out that he was just a naive child. It is unknown what will happen if she continues to stay close to Max Warren. Of course, Carl hopes that he will be allowed to see her more often, but this is difficult to guarantee. Judging by his look, it becomes clear that it is really better for him not to approach her. After the conversation, Carl left the room into the corridor and again met with Actrium. Now it evokes two negative emotions in the leopard and a desire to kill. Carl reminded this guy that he was now constantly watching him, and now he would not allow him to offend Lisa. This is what happens when you neglect the rules too much and allow yourself too much. All this time he beat her carefully, but now everyone around can find out the truth. So he decided to get rid of Liz. He took the girl by the hand and went to the Marquis to tell her that nothing was working out for her. According to Actrium, she is completely stupid and unteachable, so the classes seem completely useless. The Marquise immediately became very serious, but looked at Liz carefully, as if expecting her reaction. The girl was clearly upset and did not react at all. It seems that she is really to blame. There is always the opportunity to give it to Carl, or use it as bait for other beast men. In any case, he did not intend to hold her for long, and apparently Actrium was very happy to hear this. Max said that he would give the girl to someone else. It was obvious that he was listening to his assistant. Lisa was even more upset because she was hoping for the help of the Marquise. All her dreams collapsed at one moment. He promised to give her time to become useful, but apparently time has run out, and she is no longer needed. Lisa looked at this tall and handsome guy and understood that she did not want to part with him. That you are just the opposite. She wants to be around all the time, but you can't beg for it. She doesn't want to be hated at all, but apparently the scenario of her life is again turning to the dark side. As expected from the very beginning, she should not be here at all. She does not belong here. Lisa hoped to be useful, but you can only be useful as payment for someone else. Now she has no choice at all. And oddly enough, Actrium's relationship with her has improved. Apparently, this is due to the fact that he is waiting for the day when she completely disappears from his life. Now he can even praise her, because this will not affect future changes at all. He hopes that Carl will no longer come to protect her, and generally does not understand how she got here. There is nothing special at all about this dumb captive. We are just seeing a gray routine. All the time he despised her, and even wanted to kill her. But now he felt completely different emotions. He approached Lisa and asked her not to be afraid, because he was not going to beat her. He just wants to teach her a few things that may be useful in her future life. Actrium wants to teach her exactly how to ask her owner to leave her. Actrium did not expect what happened next at all, because Lisa refused and began to push him away from her. He got even more angry and immediately grabbed her hands. Does she really want the owner to throw her in the trash? These words were enough to instantly calm the girl down, because it became clear what she was afraid of more than anything else. It seemed that there was no one else to expect help from, but it was at that moment that someone else entered the room. An aggressive Carl looked at this scene and tried to figure out what was happening. He started asking questions in order to find out what Actrium had just tried to do. It was difficult to come up with anything, so the servant took the dishes and said that he wanted to take them with him. He immediately, hurriedly tried to leave the room and did not pay attention to the fact that Carl ordered him to stop. It was decided to deal with it a little later, and now focus on more important things. As soon as Carl appeared, Lisa immediately changed her sadness to cheerfulness and again smiled with her head held high. Now he will try to find out how many times the atrium offended her. Perhaps this is not the first such incident. The girl began to count out loud, and it turned out that this was not the first such situation. It was clear that with each of her calculations, Carl stopped getting angrier and angrier, as if he was about to explode with anger. At some point, Lisa realized that her calculations were making him more aggressive, and she stopped. She immediately took a step forward and began to apologize, not even realizing that it was not her fault. I had to immediately explain to her that she was not to blame for anything, and Carl was not angry with her at all. He's angry with himself because he completely forgot to pay attention all this time and allowed this to happen. It seemed that she should cope with the problems herself, but the Marquise completely forgot about her, and she could not defend herself. After this, Lisa asked to keep this a secret from the owner. Carl was very surprised by this request. She thinks that if they find out about this incident, she will be kicked out immediately. Apparently, she doesn't understand what's happening at all, and she's incredibly intimidated. A lot of thoughts ran through Carl's head. He began to guess about something terrible. After checking her arm, it became clear that a large number of bruises were hidden under her clothes. This continued every day, and all this time, Lisa was afraid to say even a word. He constantly repeated that if Lisa complained, you would certainly kick her out, and she believed this lie. The leopard's face was distorted. There was only one thought in his head: to tear the Actrium into pieces. He beat the girl in places that were protected by clothing and continued to blackmail her day after day. The only thing it must do is obey the command of its master, and no one else. It is impossible not to allow anyone in this world to offend her. She must remember this once and for all. It was decided to cure her of her injuries, and only then deal with this problem. Carl immediately told the Marquise about everything and explained that if he had not entered the room in time, everything would have ended sadly. This terrible servant needs to be replaced, because the one who did it once will not stop and will cross the line again. Max remembers that he still needs to return soon, so now he doesn't need the Chamberlain at all. Carl must tell this man to never enter the Marquis' room again. By evening, Lisa was already lying in her bed and trying to analyze everything that had happened. She had already been told that the Chamberlain would no longer come and disturb her. All the bad things were behind her. Also, Lisa still hasn't gotten her own room and continues to sleep on the floor next to Max. Sometimes it is very difficult for her to resist touching him. Lisa understands that separation is inevitable, but she wants to stretch this moment out for as long as possible. The girl decided to get up and approach him. The main thing is to do everything very quietly so as not to wake him up. It turned out that he was all wet. Perhaps he was having some kind of nightmare at home. A scene from the past immediately flashed through my memory. That very moment that was even scary to remember. Little Lisa was next to her mother, holding her hand and crying while she was sweating because of the fever. Lisa decided to take a towel and wipe it under his face, thereby helping at least a little. Of course, this was enough to wake up Max. Like a real military man, he always senses the approach of danger. It seemed to him that they wanted to kill him. Night killers, professional killers. But in reality, everything was different. In front of him stood a small, frightened creature who couldn't even explain why she had just done it. Tears immediately appeared in the girl's eyes, and of course she began to apologize nonstop. It seemed to her that because of his anger, he might abandon her even earlier and kick her out of the house right now. Only after looking more closely did Max realize that Lisa was holding an ordinary scarf in her hand. It's not a knife, a gun, or a machete at all, which means she didn't intend to kill him. He was as angry as if she were holding a chainsaw in her hands. But in fact, she only wanted to help. This young girl deserves leniency for her naivety and sincere kindness. The Marquis hugged her and began to calm her down, doing everything so that she would finally stop crying and feel safe. Lisa explained that all this time she was worried that he was having a nightmare, and that's why she decided to approach him. She hopes that he will understand her excitement and will not be at all afraid of her in the future. This ended the night scene. They both went to bed and woke up with the first rays of the sun. Servants have a lot of different jobs. Lisa has long been accustomed to doing such activities. She is not upset at all, but on the contrary, she is glad that she can be useful and help the Marquise in some way. She wouldn't have worked alone if it weren't for Carl, who literally saved her from an even more difficult fate. Lisa is also very glad that she is surrounded by good people, and this is not just Max Warren. She also does not forget about the kindness of Carl and Zenoch, who are always ready to respond to her request. She was asked only to follow the wishes of the owner, but so far she cannot even cope with this. And it seems that it's not enough to know that everything is fine with him. You want more. You want to be close. Sometimes Lisa admits that she considers herself stupid because she does not deserve more, because she is just a servant. You cannot upset the owner and constantly ask for a meeting with him. This way she can anger him even more, and then she will start having serious problems. It seemed that life was getting better, but sometimes something happens that is completely out of the general scenario. Two guys met her in one of the rooms of the estate and immediately demonstrated all their hatred. A few seconds later, she found herself in the garden and completely forgot about her daily tasks. Apparently, they waited a long time for her to come out, because it would have been very difficult to catch her in the Marquise's room. The guys laughed at her. They think that this is a closed dog messing around and deceiving its master. Among them was the same offender, Chamberlain Actrium, who now hates her with all his heart. She looked at him with frightened eyes and could not understand what he was doing here, because he had not appeared in this house for a long time. His assistants know that Lisa practically cannot speak, so there is no need to be afraid that she will start screaming. No one will look for a captive from another country, so you can do whatever you want with her. At that moment, she remembered Carl's words when he said that Lisa should not allow anyone to offend her. At the time, it seemed like just a basic stop, but now these words allowed her to reveal hidden strength. She grabbed her offender by the hand and tried in every possible way to stop him, to do at least something to protect herself. Of course, it wasn't enough. A little girl against 3 boys can't gain the upper hand. It's an uneven battle. But tears appeared in her eyes again. Lisa thought that death was now awaiting her, at that moment when she really wanted to live. Only now, in her life, a person dear to her heart has finally appeared, whom she does not want to let go. Lisa has become greedy. Now she wants to live, although she previously dreamed that it would all end quickly. When she started screaming, the horses on the estate immediately went into some kind of violent state. They began to make strange sounds. Nothing like this had happened before, and that is why the Marquis was interested in it. He knows his horses well, and also remembers what happened when he first saw Liz, and the pigeons that protect her. A picture of what happened immediately formed in his head, especially after what he saw in the corridor. The commander-in-chief instantly accelerated and ran to help his servant. Within a few seconds he was in the garden, behind the backs of these unscrupulous guys who had removed Lisa. When they realized what had happened, they immediately lost all their masculinity and fearlessness. In the first seconds, Max didn't even think about them. All his attention was directed to one point. He only looked into Lisa's eyes and tried to make sure that everything was fine with her and that she was healthy. Lisa always cries a lot, and we also cannot forget that she does not know even the most basic things. Even her weakness is annoying, and sometimes you want to kick her out into the street so as not to feel this compassion. Max was never kind to her, much less caring or tender, but as soon as he sees that her fragile young body begins to suffer, he immediately completely loses control over his emotions. Hugging her with one arm, his other hand took hold of the sword, which is always on the Marquise's belt. Everything that happened next can be called different words: justice, retribution, punishment, but this does not change the essence. The offenders were destroyed. Lisa fell asleep and opened her eyes when it was already late evening. The first thing she saw was the Marquise, who was sitting thoughtfully opposite her. Tears appeared in her eyes again. Apparently, this is something ordinary for this girl. She is upset because the person dear to her constantly sees her in a pitiful guise, and she does not want this at all. Lisa covered her face with her hands, as if trying to hide from the whole world, and most importantly, from Max. He called her to him and extended his hand. apparently unable to withstand this tension and show his pity. Perhaps behind these feelings lies something more than the usual pity for a weak creature. It is unknown what he felt when she sat on his lap, but it was clear that Max wanted to help. Lisa said that it was not her fault and asked him not to leave her, because all she needed was to be near him. She doesn't need another owner, because no one has ever hugged her except him, and he's the only one she has left. Lisa wants to find out what she needs to do in order to remain his servant, because she is ready to make any sacrifice. Max didn't answer at all. He just stroked her head and hugged her tightly to his chest, as if he were his little girl. He asked her to never get involved in conversations with strangers again, and not to trust anyone but him. Even if they say that this is the order of the Marquise, they still refuse to carry out the orders of strangers. Max himself doesn't understand. From what moment did he begin to feel responsible for the person he was supposed to use? All this is not at all like him, although now he no longer attaches much importance to it. Now he is trying to understand his feelings, but he doesn't understand anything at all. The only thing he knows is that when Lisa is in danger, he immediately wants to help her. He sees how she instinctively begins to look for him with her gaze, and feels relieved from the understanding of her importance. These feelings grow like tree branches, as if behind them, the sky and the sun will soon no longer be visible. She seems like a good person, and clearly deserves a full chance to prove herself. The next day, the Marquis woke up at the first rays of the sun and immediately went to work. All their work has already been practically done, and now they can return to the capital. Carl hoped that now he would receive Lisa as a gift, but apparently this is just a dream. The Marquise explained to him that plans had changed, and apparently forgot that it would be difficult to go with her to the imperial palace. On the other hand, Max cannot allow her to travel alone. This is some kind of internal contradiction. Max will go first. His assistants must take care of the other soldiers. Carl will lead the elite fighting pen, which must be the first to go to the mansion. Max plans to return in at least 2 months and wait for the holiday in honor of the victory. All this is necessary in order to closely monitor the imperial family. But even all these political plans and strategies cannot completely occupy his thoughts. Now Lisa takes up too much space in his head, although he may not like it at all. The Marquis very quietly approached the girl and carefully woke her up. He thinks that there will be nothing wrong if they spend the night together, because these are the conditions. He thought that Lisa might not like it, but the girl, on the contrary, accepted this news with a smile on her face. She went up to him and tried to take off his clothes, no matter how strange it sounded. For a moment, Max thought that she was going to hug him, but then he laughed because of his thoughts. Sometimes stupid things come into his head, but maybe someday these stupid things will become reality. Never say never. As soon as night fell, the bed was prepared, and they went to bed together. It was a strange feeling, and because of these emotions, Max could fall asleep for a long time. He was pleased to feel her body temperature gradually rising next to him. He doesn't even remember feeling something like this before, so it's a special feeling. He remembered her crying face, which told her that no one had ever hugged her. Max felt that he had a similar problem. He was always distant and did not feel the care of his loved ones. Only when he was with her did he feel this warmth, although he himself could not fully admit it to himself. Lisa said that she likes to hug, and it seems that now he is beginning to understand her. When the sun rose, the young lady opened her eyes and felt her master's hand on her. He calmed her down and said that they could sleep some more, because they had nowhere to rush. And it seemed like it was all some kind of dream, because I had never behaved like this before. Her heart began to beat at an incredible speed, and her breathing seemed to freeze in place. And I wanted to feel it a little more. I wanted this feeling to last forever. Soon they packed their things and hit the road. Max decided to replace the carriage with a horse, since the road was not at all easy. Because of this, Lisa began to feel unwell when the horse began to tire and had to slow down a little. He was proud when he saw that she was pretending and enduring discomfort for his sake. Her connection with animals is incredibly adorable, but so far it's of little use. Soon they will be near the border and will be able to fully relax. But for now, they cannot stop. There is always a high chance of getting sick in the cool forest, so it would be best to take a carriage. Soon, Max could not stand it and realized that he needed to make a stop. Otherwise, they would not be able to reach their destination. Although Lisa could have gone down on her own, The Marquise chose to do everything possible for her comfort. The weather was beautiful outside, the sun was shining, and there was no one around who could stop them. Soon she will begin to feel better. The horse will also rest, and they will be able to continue on their way. At that moment, there was no smile on her face, because for the first time she thought about the reason for her embarrassment. Perhaps this is the reason right in front of her, but she had never felt anything like this before. New emotions are always a little scary, but you need to try to keep yourself within limits. Max tried to check her leg, and when he saw this reaction, he immediately stood up and looked sharply at her. He turned around and said that now they had time to sleep before leaving, and went in the other direction. Meanwhile, many aristocrats learned that the Marquis Warren was going to the capital, and this did not make them happy at all. They know that Max did an excellent job on the battlefield, but here he can cause problems, and this cannot be allowed. It was proposed to get rid of him as quickly as possible, and Duke Lightman is one of those who must make the decision. The previous Marquis Warren, who was the Emperor's shield and sword, has died, and the new one will return as a war hero. He defeated the army of 10 countries and doubled the territory of the empire. This will definitely go down in history. After his return, the entire elite, which ruled for 10 years, will have to step down from power. Of course, the aristocrats cannot allow this, so they must send an assassin for Max. Most likely he will travel unaccompanied, and it will be possible to disguise himself as an attack by the rebels. Max has a lot of enemies, so no one will suspect the leadership of the empire. Meanwhile, Max and his companion finally reached a safe place. We were not at all expecting to meet them at such a late time of day, so we did not have time to prepare for their arrival. Everyone knows that the Marquis will soon receive the title of Duke, so he treats him with great respect. Not only is he an honorable man, but he is also incredibly smart and handsome. The entire secular society is waiting for his arrival, and every father wants the Marquis to get closer to his daughter for the sake of a profitable alliance. After a long journey, it's time to relax a little. You can even indulge in a glass of red wine. After the end of the war, Max finally felt free, and considers it wrong to cling to a young lady. The door of his room opened, and the same girl he had been waiting for a long time entered. No, this is not Lisa at all, but just the daughter of a count who so badly desires a profitable alliance. He specifically sent her here to seduce the Marquise, because she is a professional in this matter. This girl does not have calluses that can easily be found on the body of maids, but even this did not save her. Max ordered her to leave immediately, and reminded her that the Count's daughter has no right to serve guests at night. It was tough, uncompromising, but fair, and this quality cannot be denied to the Marquise. He didn't sleep almost all night, drank much more than a glass of wine, but didn't even feel drunk. All his attention was focused on one point, or rather, on one person. It wasn't even dawn yet, and he had already tried to wake up Liz and said that it was better for them to stay in another place. He understands that she is very tired, but sometimes circumstances are not the best. At such moments, it is difficult to understand which of them is the master. Perhaps this is the whole irony of their relationship. They soon reached a nearby hotel and asked for a double room. It turned out that only single rooms were available in this hotel, and there were no other hotels nearby. This hotel is the best in the city, and even the single room is very spacious. They had to come here because all sorts of annoying things were happening in other places. It seems more comfortable here, and it's too late to look for something better, so you have to make a decision quickly. The Marquis paid for a single room and thanked Lisa for his patience. He asked her to stay here, and he went in the other direction and said that she could not be with him. He also asked her to go to bed and not wait for his return, but promised to return as quickly as possible. In order not to explain unnecessary nuances, I had to resort to a rather interesting kung fu technique. This was the only way to avoid a huge number of questions and calm Lisa down. As soon as the girl lost consciousness, Max immediately carried her into the room and laid her on the bed. In fact, he acts precisely for her benefit, because he knows that rats appear only at such times. The Marquis immediately grabbed his ball and prepared for a life-or-death battle. It turned out that there were already professional killers in front of the house who had come to take his soul. This is not the first time Max has faced his death, and until now, he has always prevailed in such confrontations. Thanks to their arrival, he will not have to pretend that he has any important matters. Soon he gave free rein to his feelings and completely relaxed. because during a battle, he always enjoys the process. The Sicarios were defeated. Only a few of them remained, but they completely lost hope of successfully completing the mission. It became clear that even 10 professional killers would not kill this man, because he is a real monster. Max is ready to offer two options: die in agony, or die a less painful death. If the killers reveal the names of those who sent them, then Max will show mercy and kill them very quickly. He doesn't like to wait, so as soon as he suggested this option, he immediately killed one of the mercenaries. He gave one last chance, but the Sicario refused to talk about his boss and suffered a terrible death. After the deed was done, it was time to think. Could a union of aristocrats be behind all this? If they really started sending assassins, then they need to go to the palace immediately. That's exactly what he did. As soon as the sun rose in the sky and illuminated the road, he immediately set out on the road. Their journey took a long time. For 2 weeks now, they have been driving non-stop towards the palace. During this time, many attempts have been made on them, but so far Max has been able to cope with any danger. Even an entire army cannot withstand such a number of attacks. It is not surprising that the baby can hardly stand. She is completely tired and exhausted, but refuses to complain about life and endures like a holy priest. Soon they found shelter and can now rest a little. Max immediately brought medicine for Liz. He understands that it is very difficult for her, but promises that soon it will all end and they will be safe. Now, for the first time, he thought about taking a short break from travel for the common good. He is tired of constantly fighting off the Sicario, and besides, he clearly understands that Lisa may soon die from overwork. Apparently, he was so tired of everything that was happening that he no longer had the strength to hide his feelings. These are the very feelings that played out in him from the moment he first met this girl. He succumbed to temptation and kissed her, feeling all his helplessness before the powerful power of love. After that, he got up and left her resting on the bed, as if nothing special had happened. The next day, they went for a little walk in the fresh air. This is a good opportunity to relax and clear your head of bad thoughts, as well as get closer to each other. Max feels comfortable next to Lisa, but bad thoughts constantly creep into his head. He can't leave her alone because they are constantly being attacked, so he needs to be patient. He noticed that she was especially attentive to something specific. Apparently, the girl saw desserts that she had dreamed of trying all her life, but never had the opportunity. Max immediately fulfilled her dream, bought a lot of sweets, and began to feed her right on the street. It was like caring for a small child, but Lisa had never really tried candy. This is the first time she has eaten something so sweet. With each new day, life opens up to her with a new palette of colors. She also decided to show care and feed her owner, as a sign of respect and gratitude for everything he does. Max, apparently, was not at all ready for such an attitude. He was also not used to showing concern. She seems to think it's a sweet gesture because she does the same and smiles sincerely back. It seemed that nothing would ruin their day, but after a few seconds, Liz's face dimmed. She tilted her head down and immediately removed the smile from her face because she felt that the blood was flowing from her body again. This had happened before, and she didn't know how to behave around Max, but he quickly understood everything. The Marquise was not taken aback. He took off his cloak and section on her, as if protecting her from the eyes of the whole world. She tried to stop him and said that the clothes might get dirty, but he didn't even want to listen to it. If earlier the Marquise only occasionally showed care and warm feelings, now these emotions have completely taken over his consciousness. He asked her not to worry or worry about anything, because when she is next to him, everything will be fine. All this time, it seemed to him that she was a child, but now he realized that in front of him was a full-fledged woman. Max looked after her very well and made sure she felt fine. And the only thing that outrages me is that Lisa constantly suffers. Sometimes she doesn't talk about her real feelings. She is already accustomed to living in this style. But this does not mean that she needs to live her whole life this way. Now Max would gladly kill a few Sicarios, because that would be the only thing that would distract him. They could not stay in one place for long, and therefore constantly tried to continue their route. Soon, they finally reached their destination, and now a new chapter in life begins. Max wanted to calmly pass through the gate, but something unheard of happened, because the knights stopped his path. They did not understand that the legendary Marquis Mark Warren was standing in front of them, who carried out the order of the emperor. As soon as they heard these words, they immediately bowed to the legendary warrior. They are honored to meet this commander-in-chief, who has achieved outstanding victories on the battlefield. The capital always blooms and smells. Not only a large number of just such people come here, but also all the aristocrats. The Marquis was received as expected. He felt respect and awe from everyone around him. He also did not forget to ask for full care and attention to his maid, and hinted that this was very important. When Max walked into the meeting room, Lisa stayed behind and only wished him good luck in a quiet voice. Of course, everyone around immediately became interested in what exactly her relationship was with the Marquis. Lisa cannot speak fully, so she quickly realized that she needed to write a short note.